I completely forgot what happened in the first 4 seasons of Stranger Things. I'll be real. So we're watching a recap.
Eric Voss, and this is a recap of the complete historical timeline of Stranger Things. Season 1 that came out in 2016, back when, you know, baby Eric started breaking down YouTube videos. Then Season 2 in 2017, Season 3 in 2019, Season 4 in 2022, and even the play, Stranger Things The First Shadow. Everything you need to know going into the final season. Since
They had a play? I didn't even know that shit.
Netflix and these show producers love to wait for all of their actors to sprout facial hair in between seasons. There's been a lot of time and a lot of real world drama and pandemics for you to forget what happened in the earlier years. So this is just one of those very important refresher videos. So as you're skipping out from wholesome family bonding this Thanksgiving holiday to instead watch something from Ted Sarandos' empire of content, you can have this voice in the back of your head telling you who everyone is. Hey, if you like what we do here at New Rockstars, we have an incredible Stranger Things inspired Vecna Puffs cereal shirt available exclusively on our merch store, nerdriot.shop. We actually are having a huge holiday sale all month long, kicking off with a buy one, get one 50% off deal. Also, Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals are coming soon. Grabbing a holiday gift from Nerd Riot is the best way.
I should have skipped this. I don't know why I did it.
This summary will span 44 years of history, from 1943, which is as far back as the backstory as the play takes us, all the way to 1987, when Season 5 will take place. Okay, starting with Season 1, November 6, 1983. Will Byers goes missing in Hawkins, Indiana after playing D&D with his buddies Mike, Dustin, and Lucas. Will runs into a shadowy monster on the street and then vanishes in his backyard shed. Will's mother, Joyce Byers, begs Police Chief Jim Hopper for help. He's a Vietnam vet and he lost his daughter to cancer. Meanwhile, the three boys search for Will and find a mysterious girl with a shaved head and limited speech abilities with the number 011 tattooed on her wrist. They nickname her 11, or L. She explains by flipping their D&D board that Will Byers is in an upside down dimension and he's being hunted by a creature that they nicknamed the Demogorgon after the D&D figurine. Mike's sister Nancy and her friend Barb go to Steve Harrington's party. While Nancy and Steve smooch, Barb sits by the heated pool and gets taken by the Demogorgon. Will's older brother Jonathan, nearby taking photos of Will's bike crash, takes photos of the pool party and does get a shot of the Demogorgon. With both Jonathan and Nancy seeking missing loved ones, they end up striking up a friendship, but Joyce's house gets some weird staticky phone calls and flickering lights that Joyce channels through Christmas lights that she believes is her son Will communicating to her. So she rigs up an alphabet on her wall. Will spells out run and the Demogorgon crawls out of the ceiling. But then what we think is Will's body is dredged out of the quarry and Peter Gabriel's cover of Hero plays and we're all crying. But 11 insists Will is alive, as does Joyce. Hopper investigates and learns that the body was a fake. Hopper then breaks into the Hawkins lab and finds an interdimensional gateway. With the government spying on Hopper, Hopper finds Terry Ives, a woman involved with MK Ultra experiments conducted by a Dr. Martin Brenner at the Hawkins lab. We learn that Terry was pregnant and thought that she had miscarried, but the baby lived, a baby that would have been named Jane, taken by Dr. Brenner and turned into the girl we now know as 11. When some bullies try to make Mike jump off a cliff, you know how in the 80s you really had to look out for bullies doing that. 11 saves Mike by levitating him and then attacks the bullies. Amazing group hug. And then as these kids are chased by Dr. Brenner's men, 11 pulls a reverse ET and flips the van over the kids on their bikes. The combined groups now use a sensory deprivation tank with salinated water to help 11 locate Will and Barb, but Barb, 11 reports, did not make it. Nancy and Jonathan distract the monster at the Byers house where Steve barges in thinking the two are hooking up. Then Steve ends up batting up against the Demogorgon. Brenner's agents arrive at the school, but 11 uses her powers to kill a whole bunch of them. The Demogorgon then takes out Dr. Brenner, we think, and 11 uses her psychic powers to disintegrate the Demogorgon, but really it's just sending it back to the Upside Down with her as she disappears along with it. All of this is going down while Joyce and Hopper are in the Upside Down themselves, going through the gate to find Will in the Upside Down version of the Hawkins library. Actually, Season 5's opening scene, released early online by Netflix, shows that while Will was in the Upside Down, Will actually fought back against the Demogorgon in Castle Byers, bravely evaded it, but then was captured and brought to the library to have this moment with Vecna. Vecna being the big bad that this series will reveal later. So when Joyce and Hopper find Will, Vecna was like hanging out in the background there. So now we're in Christmas 1983. Things seem to be back to normal, but Will Byers coughs up a slug in his bathroom sink and mentally transports back to the Upside Down. He's still not okay. Season 2, it's now Halloween 1984, and the kids are going as the Ghostbusters. Mike calls out for 11 on the radio every night with no response. Nancy feels guilt over Barb, and Barb's parents have hired conspiracy theorist Murray Bauman to hassle Hopper for answers. Joyce has started dating Bob Newby. Dustin has started looking after a little slug quadruped that he has nicknamed Dart after D'Artagnan because the thing loves to eat Three Musketeers bars. This slug is much like the slugs that Will has been coughing up, and we find out that they are early stage demogorgons called Demo Dogs. Will, meanwhile, keeps having visions of the Upside Down with a smoky monster that I'm choosing to call a smoky monster because he's not named the Mind Flayer yet, and the smoke monster is something that can only exist in Lost. We learn that Eleven is not dead. She transported herself to the Upside Down with the Demogorgon. She crawls back to our dimension through a hole and then lives in the woods for a while until Hopper finds her after leaving some Eggo waffles out for her. The two of them end up living together in Hopper's dad's cabin. Dr. Owens, we find out, is now running the Hawkins lab. Max is the new kid at school. Lucas gets a thing for her. Max's brother is Billy, the new bad boy with some major anger issues. Billy and Steve form a macho rivalry, but Steve is just kind of worried about losing Nancy to Jonathan. Nancy and Jonathan have been spending a lot more time investigating Barb, and they end up getting a recording of Dr. Owens that they share with Murray that Barb is indeed dead. Meanwhile, Steve just ends up taking on a motherly relationship with Dustin this season, tossing some meat around the woods to find Dart while sharing some hairstyling tips. The smoky monster in Will's visions overtakes him, and then a possessed Will begins demanding that the house be kept cold, and he scribbles all these drawings that Joyce and the other adults realize connect to form a depiction of the smoky monster that he's been seeing and correspond to a map of tunnels beneath the town of Hawkins. When the lab agents burn a tunnel, Will screams in pain, and they learn that Will is tethered to the Upside Down with all of the creatures via a kind of hive mind. Actually, when it comes to season 5, the Duffer Brothers have said that season 2 episode 6, The Spy, specifically the moment when Will was brought to the Hawkins lab and it's discovered that he's either an agent or a vessel for what we then thought was just the Mind Flayer, that, they said, is a very important thing to revisit ahead of season 5. Eleven learns about her mother and gets mad at Hopper for hiding it from her, so she leaves the cabin and finds out what was suggested about her mom in season 1 is true, and then she runs away to Chicago, where she meets Kali, aka 8. These superpowered lab experiment runaways are very okay with using their powers for unethical killing, and even though they were the cold open for season 2, Eleven kind of leaves them behind, and we never hear from them again. It sounds like this random episode was going to be a spin-off for another series, and due to poor reception, Netflix never moved forward on it. It's kind of unfair to use this one episode to judge all of season 2, though. Season 2, not a bad season. The hive mind controlling Will instructs Dart and the other Demodogs to attack the agents in the tunnels, and then everyone back at the lab, leaving Joyce, Bob, Will, Hopper, and Mike and Dr. Owens trapped. They sedate Will to keep the hive mind from attacking them. Bob volunteers to go down to override the security system so the others can escape, but Bob gets mauled by Demodogs. Back at the Byers house, the group tries to trick Will and the hive mind possessing him as to where they really are, but because it's a familiar setting from the phone ringing, the hive mind that's in Will recognizes where they are and draws the Demodogs toward them. Eleven arrives at the last second and wipes out the Demodogs, shocking everyone who thought that she was dead for the past year. The kids label the entity controlling Will as the Mind Flayer, another villain from D&D lore. They take Will to Hopper's cabin and burn the monster out of him, while Eleven and Hopper return to the lab to close the gate, and while the other kids divert the Demodogs through the tunnels. With the heat cranked up, they're able to detach the Mind Flayer from Will, and Eleven is able to psychically close the gate. The season ends at the Snowball Dance, where Mike and Eleven kiss, and Will continues to see visions of the Mind Flayer. Season 3 jumps ahead to July 1985. Everyone's excited about the new Starcourt Mall, even though it means decimation of the local shops downtown. Mike and Eleven are smooching a lot in Hopper's cabin, with Hopper having to establish an open door policy, with Lucas spending more time with Max. Poor Will is just kind of left as a kid who just wants to D&D with his friends. And it is further established this season that Will is not into girls. Dustin's back from summer camp with reports of a new girlfriend in Utah, whom he sets up with a communication tower to call, but no one believes him. But he does intercept a Russian transmission. Steve is working at Scoops Ahoy with his new friend Robin, and Dustin brings the transmission to them, where Robin's able to decode the message to mean some kind of Russian shipment is being sent to the mall. Billy is now the hot lifeguard at the community pool, attracting Mrs. Wheeler. She nearly cheats on her husband Ted with this kid, but at one moment she sees Holly sleeping on Ted's lap and she decides not to. I only bring up this minor subplot not just because it was iconic, but because Karen and Holly are gonna have a pretty big role in season 5. Billy crashes his car and gets dragged into an old steel mill where the Mind Flayer possesses him. Lucas's little sister Erica takes over the show now as she helps him burrow through the mall's ventilation to get to the elevator where the shipment's being sent, and down beneath the mall they find a massive Russian base. The Russians have some kind of machine to try to open another portal to the Upside Down. Nancy and Jonathan are now interns for the Hawkins Post, and they're investigating some rabid rats and find some of the townspeople have been eating fertilizer. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper couple off, and Hopper ends up getting attacked by this Terminator-like Russian assassin. But the reason people have been eating fertilizers is because a Mind Flayer possessed Billy has been helping the Mind Flayer flay all these people around town, with all these vines snaking back into the steel mill to connect everyone, not just through a hive mind, a telepathic one, but like a nasty, physical, viney extension. So now all these flayed zombies are attacking Nancy and Jonathan at the hospital, and these bodies merge to form a fleshy John Carpenter-esque thing monster. 11 and the others send the monster out the window. Hopper learns from the mayor that the Russians have been buying up abandoned property all over town. Joyce and Hopper visit one of these properties and get attacked by that assassin again, but they kidnap one of the scientists, Alexei, a very sweet nerd who just wants Slurpees. They get Murray to translate for him as they realize the full plan is to open a new gate under the Starcourt Mall that the Russians can control. 11 connects with Billy psychically and learns that the Mind Flayer considers her a threat for closing the gate at the end of season 2. The Mind Flayer learns where 11 is and sends all the flayed back to create a fleshy super monster to kill her. And in the fight, a piece of the Mind Flayer's flesh embeds in her leg. At one point, Steve and Robin get interrogated with Russian truth serum. They're able to get away, and afterwards they question the plot to Back to the Future.
I'm pretty sure that mom was trying to bang her son.
And Robin tells Steve that she's gay, and Steve is so supportive. The kids reunite at the mall, and 11 extracts the Mind Flayer chunk, but in the process loses her powers. Hopper, Joyce, Murray, and Alexei are looking for the kids at the Independence Day fair, but the Russian assassin shoots poor Alexei. They hear a radio message and meet the kids back at the mall. The adults go down to the Russian base to destroy the gate, while Dustin, Steve, Eric, and Robin head up to the radio tower, where Dustin gets some help from his actually real Utah girlfriend Susie as they sing the Neverending Story theme song to each other. Mind Flayer and Billy arrive to the mall. The kids hold back the Mind Flayer with fireworks, and 11 frees Billy by getting him to focus on some happy memories. Billy, finally free, sacrifices himself so the others can get away. Hopper fights the Russian assassin down below, and when it seems like Hopper's trapped by the open gate, an explosion seems to kill Hopper. And now with the gate closed, Dr. Owens and the US military shut down the mall, and the whole incident is covered up as just a mall fire. 11 leaves Hawkins with the Byers family to the West Coast, and the season ends with 11 reading Hopper's heartbreaking letter set to Peter Gabriel's cover of Heroes, including this cryptic clue to keep the door open 3 inches. A post-credits scene for this.
You know what's funny? Bro, season 3 was the best season. I'm not gonna lie. If you tell me anything different, bro, I'm gonna be real. Your opinion isn't valid. Season 3 was the best season of Stranger Things. Can we agree on it, please?
Season shows the Russian base where an American is mentioned being in custody, where we learn Demogorgons are being unleashed on prisoners. We are so pumped for the final season of Stranger Things. It's crazy that it's been almost a decade since the first episode aired, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I had never played Dungeons and Dragons before Stranger Things, but the show made it look so fun, and everybody kind of makes comments about role, but everything virtual need.
That was a smooth ad. Actually, it just came out of nowhere. It wasn't really smooth.
Neurodivergent or otherwise inclusive GM so that all players can feel safe, represented, and welcome. You can even check out other players review playing D game. Season 4. It's now spring break 1986. Mike comes to visit 11 and the Byerses in California. Without her powers, 11 is now getting bullied by some girl named Angela and ends up hitting Angela in the face with a roller skate at the Rinkomania. Joyce learns that Hopper's still alive in a Russian gulag, having been thrown from the platform by the explosion and captured by the Russians. So Joyce and Murray connect with a guy named Enzo and set up a deal to free Hopper. So they head to Alaska with a pilot named Yuri. Back in Hawkins, Mike and Dustin have joined the Hellfire D&D club led by Eddie Munson, while Lucas tries to be a popular jock on the basketball team. Max and Lucas have broken up while Max is mourning her brother. Cheerleader Chrissy Cunningham has some disturbing visions of clocks and trees and hears a creepy voice stalking her. So she comes to Eddie for help, but in Eddie's trailer, she goes into a trance and floats, and her body is contorted in a gruesome death. Eddie flees, and the satanic panic of the town, led by Chrissy's boyfriend Jason, causes folks to blame Eddie for the murder. Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Max find Eddie, and they settle on the name Vecna for this new monster. Nancy learns about the history of the Creel family, who were murdered in the same way as Chrissy. The father, Victor Creel, is blinded and incarcerated in a hospital, believing a demon killed his wife and daughter and put his son Henry in a coma, who he thinks died shortly after. But he said a voice of an angel pulled him out of the trance, referring to his favorite song. 11, meanwhile, is intercepted by Dr. Owens to take her to a desert base to help her get her powers back. Owens is working with Dr. Brenner, who did not die in season 1, while in the sensory deprivation tank of Project Nina, 11 relives her time in the Rainbow Room of the Hawkins lab, giving us some interesting de-aging on Millie Bobby Brown. And we learned about 11's relationship with an orderly there. We find out this orderly is 001, and he promises to help her escape, but he kills the other child test subjects in the same way Vecna has been killing teens around town. 11 refuses to join him and psychically banishes him to a mysterious realm that we later learn is called Dimension X. There, we learn that Henry formed a link with the Mind Flayer and all the Demogorgons and other creatures of this realm. So anytime we heard the voice of the Mind Flayer, we were really hearing Vecna. And now as Vecna, Henry Creel is trying to break back into our world. Government agents destroy the Byers house in California, and Mike, Will, and Jonathan team up with Jonathan's buddy and Surfer Boy pizza co-worker Argyle to drive across the country looking for 11. They end up visiting Dustin's girlfriend's house, and Susie helps him find the desert base. Will, this season, is basically just sobbing in the back seat. The crew arrives to this base right as the military is attacking the lab. 11, with her powers now restored, downs a helicopter. Brenner dies, for real this time, and then in the pizza truck, they start heading back toward Indiana. Meanwhile, Vecna has killed 2 more teenagers in the town of Hawkins, and Max realizes she has the same symptoms of the last 2 victims, so she visits Billy's grave and then goes into a trance from Vecna. Her friends apply the favorite song logic and use Max's Walkman to play Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, and it creates an opening, and Max runs for it and escapes. Meanwhile, in Russia, we find out Yuri has betrayed Joyce and Murray. Joyce and Murray take over the plane and crash land in Russia, and Murray disguises as Yuri to go into the Russian prison. They find Hopper in a Demogorgon pit with other prisoners, and Joyce and Murray help Hopper break out as he's fighting the creatures. Joyce and Hopper briefly hook up. In this lab, these adults find other upside-down specimens, including a piece of the Mind Flayer. Learning what's going on and a call from Dr. Owens, the adults break back into the prison to fight as many upside-down creatures as they can to distract the hive mind. Really, this whole Russia subplot in season 4, not my favorite, and it kind of seems like season 3 was going to be the ending of this series, but it did so well, and Netflix is like, you have to keep making content. So they kind of had to write their way out of this stuff. So back in Hawkins, the kids realize that the murder sites all have gates there. Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie get trapped in the Upside Down while swimming to the bottom of Lover's Lake. In the Upside Down, they realize that the whole Upside Down was really frozen on the night of November 6, 1983, making the Upside Down a kind of snapshot dimension that 11 really created when she first opened that gate with Dr. Brenner in season 1. The older kids meet up at the gate in Eddie's trailer to try to get back through, but Nancy falls into a Vecna trance where Nancy learns that Vecna is Henry Creel, and he shows her a vision of Hawkins fully destroyed. He says he needs 4 kills to open the giant gate, the 4th kill being Max. The group plans to lure out Vecna to kill him using Max as bait in the attic of the Creel house. Eddie and Dustin rip an awesome cover of Master of Puppets in the Upside Down to distract the hive mind and all the demo bats so the other kids can attack Vecna when he's in his trance. Poor Eddie ends up dying an epic death. Meanwhile, the other 3 attack Vecna with guns and Molotov cocktails. 11 and the West Coasters, realizing they're not going to have enough time, find a local Surfer Boy pizza shop where Argyle sets up a makeshift salt tank for 11 to mind fight Vecna. Chrissy's boyfriend Jason shows up at the Creel house at the wrong time and thinks Lucas is doing a satanic ritual on Max. Max's Walkman gets broken in the fight. Meanwhile, Mike tells 11 he loves her, which gives her enough of a boost against Vecna, but without her Walkman, Max seems to be killed, and a huge rift is open with an intersection directly at the Hawkins library. But back in the Upside Down, Nancy, Steve, and Robin blast Vecna out the window, but in Michael Myers fashion, the dude's gone when they go look. 11 uses her powers to bring Max back to life, but the rift is still open. Days later, the news is trying to say this is an earthquake, but at this point, the Hawkins families are like, nah, we're not buying it this time. They start to get out of Dodge. Max is still in a coma. The family and friends reunite. The kids are overjoyed to find that Hopper is alive, but spory ash from the Upside Down begins to rain down. Will touches the back of his neck as they all run up that hill, and they see rifts spreading all over the town of Hawkins. So now that we're in season 5, it's the fall of 1987. It's close to the 4-year anniversary of the night Will Byers vanished. Hawkins is under military quarantine. Linda Hamilton's gonna show up. The kids are now all trying to find and kill Vecna. And while Will Byers played a literal backseat role in season 4, the story is coming full circle as really a story about Will the Wise and why this kid was chosen on the night of November 6, 1983. Now, as to why, some of those answers might come from the play, Stranger Things: The First Shadow, which premiered in December 2023 after season 4, and as a text co-written by the Duffers, its backstory is considered canon to the Netflix series. I don't know if you're gonna need to see this play to understand what comes out on the Netflix series, but I just won't be surprised if some of this history gets referenced in season 5. If you ever plan to see the play, spoiler warning here, you actually can stop watching this recap video right now. Okay, this play begins with a prologue set in 1943. That's why I said 1943 is the earliest this history goes. It's when the government's holding experiments involving the USS Eldridge, hoping to make the ship invisible to the Germans. This is actually a conspiracy theory you may have heard about, specifically since Marvel referenced it in The Void in Loki season 1. Instead, the ship gets transported not to the Marvel Void, but rather to Dimension X. Most of the crew gets killed by Demogorgons, but Captain Brenner, Martin Brenner's father, survives. Then the play moves on to the Creel family as they move to Hawkins in the late 1950s. Henry Creel has powerful psychokinetic abilities and a dark temperament. At school, he meets Patty Newby, adoptive sister to Bob Newby. Also at this school is teenage Joyce, teenage Lonnie Byers, that's Will and Jonathan's dad, and a teenage version of Jim Hopper. Henry forms a romance with Patty as he helps her try to find her birth mother, but Henry is haunted by some shadowy entity in a place Henry calls the battlefield, where the entity encourages Henry to kill animals. While he's in one of these states trying to find Patty's mom, Henry loses control, and Patty's father walks in and is nearly killed. He gets blinded in the attack and recovers to tell Patty that Henry actually saved him, and draws a picture of the shadowy entity to show it's the Mind Flayer. Joyce and Hopper don't play that big a role in this play, other than investigating the animal killings and giving this play some context as it relates to the Netflix series. But there are some details that are important, like Lonnie Byers sits in a chair that was meant for Henry, and at one point Henry tells Joyce this: "You're a nice person, Joyce. That is how they will bring you down. You need to learn to do whatever it takes to protect what you love." And Joyce says, "I don't understand." And Henry says, "You will." So who knows? Maybe season 5 is going to establish some memory Henry Creel always had for the Byers family. But then after this, Henry is sent to the Hawkins lab with Dr. Martin Brenner, who's now trying to recreate the experiment that led to his father's voyage to Dimension X. A scientist had defected on Brenner and stole some key technology, hiding it in a Nevada cave, which is why we were in Nevada in season 4. Henry Creel had stumbled upon that tech while he was playing with his spyglass, sending him to Dimension X. He was in Dimension X for 12 hours, but was exposed to the shadowy entity and came back with a different personality and a unique blood type. Brenner was able to track this kid via the spyglass he dropped. Brenner runs some tests on Henry, but Henry refuses to be controlled, so Brenner deduces that there's something that Henry loves that's keeping him from working with Brenner, so he threatens to find and kill this poor Patty Newby. Henry returns to his family, but his powers are stronger than ever, and when he reads his mother's thoughts, he learns that his mother wants to send him back to Brenner, and that sparks him to let the shadow entity take over and kill his mom and his sister and try to kill his dad. And when Henry wakes up, he goes to the high school where Joyce's production of Dark of the Moon is starting. A conflict ends with Patty falling from the rafters. Then things play out as we knew they did in the March of 1959 events from season 4. The dad, Victor Creel, is arrested for the murders. Henry ends up going with Dr. Brenner, but while he's with Brenner, Henry has a vision that Patty survived and found her mom in Vegas. Brenner tells Henry that blood transfusions from him were successful with other test subjects in the Rainbow Room, and Henry meets one of them saying, "Hello, 11, I have something new for us." And lightning flashes and the silhouette of Vecna appears on the back wall. So some important context there. The alternate dimension that Henry went to become Vecna and control the Mind Flayer and all the Demogorgons and the Demobats is not the Upside Down, but Dimension X. The Upside Down is a relatively recent buffer dimension created as a snapshot of that night of November 6, 1983, and we also learned that Henry Creel has been to Dimension X several times. It also seems like that shadow entity might have existed apart from him, and that unique blood type that he returned from Dimension X with seems to be what gave the other test subjects like 11 her powers. And we learned that Henry Creel did have a moment with Joyce Byers in 1959, and I just feel like that's gotta come up as we learn about Vecna's interest in Joyce's son, Will. So New Rockstars is gonna be covering all the episodes of season 5 when they hit.
All right. That's fire. That's fire. I remember what happened now. Now we ready.